The angels initiated their appearance, and they weren't like, hello, I'm here, check out my halo. Don't you love it? The chicks love the halo, right? They weren't like that at all. They came in, they made themselves known to me, and right away they mentioned that the world would be changing and that many of us has a role to play in this change in the world.
All right, welcome back to New Age Human. I'm your host, John Anastasio, and today we have Seph Dietlin. He is a human potential activator working with hypnotherapy and channeling the angels. So that's really cool. His work centers around raising frequency and the new earth. So we're going to dive into that. Thank you for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were chatting, and the vibe is good. The vibe is good now. But first, you did say that your niece called you out on something out of the blue and reminded you of something very interesting, and feel free to share with us that story.
Great. I love this one. So first of all, when the angels first started communicating with me, of course, as any other person would experience, you go in and out of actually trusting whether this is a figment of your imagination or not. Well, one of the things that they gave me a heads up about early on in our communications was when I woke up one day, they gave me this message that my sister was going to call me and that she was pregnant and she would have a girl. Well, certainly, as you might guess, 4 hours later, my sister called me and told me she was pregnant. And several months later, she had my niece. Now, I never told anyone about this story, but a little bit later, maybe a few years later, because this is a very extensive journey that I've had with communicating with the angels, there was a moment where I was doubting that it was them, just because things didn't look like I thought they were supposed to be, a Hollywood production. Mm-hmm. At any rate, out of the blue, my niece, who's still in that age, because kids before the age of 7 are in theta. They're in theta brainwave state, so they're still connected to the other side. My sister calls me and said, hey, that my niece wanted to speak to me. And so I said, hello. And she said, hey, do you remember that time that the angels let you know that I was coming? And I said, yes.
Oh my God.
Why? And she said, oh, I just remembered, and I wanted to see if you remembered too. Well, she didn't know that she was being prompted. Something was prompting her to do that, because it was at a moment that I needed to have a validation again, to realize that this communication link that I have with the angels is in fact authentic.
That is nuts. And you never told anybody, and that's
right.
Your sister's daughter.
Uh-huh.
And at a time that you needed validation, she just comes out of nowheres, out of the blue, literally, and just shocks you.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
My sister called me and she said that my niece wanted to talk to me, and that never happened either. And it was all very synchronistic and beautiful.
And I love the word synchronistic, because I've had conversations with people and things are in sync, and I don't believe in not deja vu, that's another thing, but I don't believe in coincidences.
Right.
Because everything has a purpose if you just pay attention.
That's true. Yeah. Raise your awareness and you'll see it more frequently than not.
Would you say, as you communicated with your angels and as you explored increasing your frequency, that the frequency of the synchronicities increased for you? Or do you think it's more like an awareness thing?
Absolutely. And I would actually describe the life that I live as miraculous. But I actually don't think that that's unique, in that I do know that we are all designed to live in a miraculous state through alignment. And alignment is connectivity to the quantum field. And we use the word quantum field a lot, and yet at the same time, it's the intelligence of the creator, the mind of the creator. And we have an invitation through the days that we're living in right now to forge an even greater connection to that field of intelligence, that field of magic, and live in a miraculous state. So the irony here is it looks like the world is about to fall off a cliff and blow itself up or something like that. And yet we are now becoming more empowered than ever to create our own reality in concert with the Creator.
Yeah. And I like how you're bringing up words that are mostly known in the people that are in the scientific world, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't often have conversations with somebody that mentions angels and quantum realm, or the what how did you use it? For some reason, I'm having a brain fart.
That's okay. The quantum field in the mind of
go.
the Creator. Yes.
Yes.
The quantum field is the mind of the Creator.
And it's like, and we share that mind, and it reminds me of how there's this current craze around AI and excitement over it, because now if you can give it a good prompt, it'll give you a good answer. And as I was going through my self-realization and my connection to the quantum field myself, I realized that what people are now experiencing with this AI with prompts is what we've already had access to, which is the quantum field. The quantum field is the original AI, which is, you don't even call it AI, it's the quantum field. It's the originator. It's like we created a copy of something, our own version of something that already exists. And if we can only tweak ourselves to understand that, that we're unstoppable. The prompts are just asking the right questions. If you can ask the ether, your God, the angels, your higher self, the right questions, you'll get the right answers. Or am I just going crazy and I'm just completely left?
No, but let me interject something that may or may not seem connected initially, but I know that it is. A few nights ago, I did an astral journey.
Ooh.
And I saw the reality. I was taken to the reality that we will be.
First, sorry. For the uninitiated, what is an astral journey?
An astral journey is a very vivid, it will seem like a very vivid dream. And yet, because time and space is an illusion, it's an actual journey where our consciousness travels into another time-space reality. And so we can travel, we can use astral travel to travel into the future, because the future is actually now. There is no future moment. There is only this now moment. And so I took an astral journey, or I was taken on an astral journey, not purposely, but invited by the angels. Now, this was after having some major discussion around transcending the matrix, which is the, let's say, the negative energy force in this simulation or reality, whatever you want to call it. And the trend or the cycle that we're in right now is actually releasing all that is illusion. And a lot of it is. There's a lot of false constructs in the world of form. And I was taken to a time space in the very near future where we are in the new earth and we are ascended into the new reality. I can tell you AI is not there. Because there will be a whole different level of connectivity to the quantum field, which is the ultimate expression of AI, is our connectivity to the mind of the Creator, working in concert or communion with the divine Creator, and to create a different reality now that this reality has served its purpose.
Oh, man. So, I mean, could you describe this new world? Is there a physical aspect of what you saw? Did you see people on clouds? Did you see people like talking with trees and fairies, like, wearing robes?
It was a little less ethereal and a little bit more like our world that we live in, only there was a sense of completeness and a lack of fear. And the connection between each other was as if you're at a great big party and the whole world is in union with each other and connected to each other as the singular being that it is. So even though we appear to have separate bodies, we're part of a unified field of consciousness. And in that sense, let's say you were to go to a party or a gathering where all feel a sense of unity, and a complete connectivity to each other, only this was vast and complete. There's a lot that took place in this astral journey, and I was reminded that I couldn't necessarily teach this. I was meant to know this, but for those who are interested, I can tell you that the overwhelming message is continue to focus on your personal ascension. Nothing else matters right now. So, for example, we're doing this podcast. This is a contribution to our personal ascension. And as it is, then of course we're allowed to do it because it takes us steps upward on that ladder. And so our calling is steps forward in our ascension, but making sure that our jobs, let's say, or our calling is about how it ascends us and not necessarily how we make money from it. What we need will be there. And definitely there was no shortage of resource in what I saw. It was abundant and it was full of love and bliss, but it wasn't so ethereal in the way that you described, like harps and that sort of thing. It was a little bit more grounded in what it kind of looks like now. Certainly there was the presence of the angelic beings and celestial beings there, but it was a little bit more realistic, sort of like us walking around our reality now, only the person next to us could be an angel because there's a unity in the frequency.
Interesting. I know there are people that are afraid or in fear right now because there's so much information that people are putting out there where we're going to go through a tough time. We're already going through a tough time, and what are we going to have to go through to get there? And it's nice to see someone that was given a glimpse of a really good possibility, right? And
yes.
To be able to hold on to that and a clear-cut message of work on self-development, self-empowerment, work on elevating yourself instead of controlling others.
Yeah,
so to speak.
The prime directive right now is anything and everything that contributes to your personal and global ascension. That's the only thing, because the impression that I got was this scene is very near on the timeline. So if we live in a world that is full of illusion, don't put a lot of effort into filling the illusion with illusion, because it's going to drop, disappear, dissolve, absorb, whatever words that you want to use, very, very shortly. So it would be an exercise in futility. The only effort that one should have right now is one of traveling or journeying their path of enlightenment. Now, that doesn't mean we neglect our jobs if we have them. We're still going to go there. But what will happen as we're actually allowing our prime directive to be focused on that is all of these other things will piece themselves together through that connectivity to the quantum field.
Wow. That's a clear-cut message. Appreciate
that.
I
would also mention this too, because you mentioned having a glimpse, and that's what the last 20 years have been like for me since the angels initiated their appearance with me. Because when they came in, they weren't like, hello, I'm here, check out my flowy gown and my wings and my halo. Don't you love it? The chicks love the halo, right? They weren't like that at all. They came in, they made themselves known to me, and right away they mentioned that the world would be changing and that many of us has a role to play in this change in the world. And they mentioned that as a part of this change, it would look nothing like the current world that we live in. They said there would be a noticeable absence of a government, of a money system, of many other constructs that we have come to believe serve humanity, and they don't, and that we would live in an entirely different reality as designed by our Creator, and that we would live in a level of creativity as we are designed by our Creator. So I spent 20 years having conversations with them, and anytime I attempted to share with anyone else these conversations, they'd be like, yeah, just come into the backyard. We're having a barbecue. Just loosen up and have a good time, right? Now, an event happened in 2020 where everyone got asked to stay home. And after that, suddenly these conversations about a change became very, very relevant, and people became very interested in what the angels have to say about where we're going. And I will tell you that about 2 months prior, in January of 2020, I was given a heads up, let's say, that it was party time and that events would start to take place. So when I was asked to go home from work and go home and stay home, I already knew that this was part of leading us into the beginning of the collapse of the old structures and beginning the initiation into the new earth frequencies in the exterior world. We've been working on this for years and years, and many of our avatars, such as Buddha and Jesus, are all beings that have helped bring the code. So this isn't something that started in 2020, but we definitely notice we came to a very pivotal point in this evolution of the human species.
That's awesome. That's
Yes.
awesome. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to see and have a conversation with you before our conversation, me seeing that as well, and just having this communication with you just further solidifies what I agree with you on, which is what's going on right now is supposed to happen, and it's right on time. If you pay attention to cycles and energy, everything has its birth and ending, and we're seeing an ending of the way things used to be, and that's how a lot of people think that's how it is when it's not. It's an illusion. It's a distraction. We've fallen so far from grace, right?
Yes. And for the audience, anyone out there who's still experiencing fear and have any idea of the sort of totalitarian, worst case scenario kind of outcomes, they're literally impossible to come to fruition because they're part of the matrix, or the illusion part of the matrix. So they can't take over what's real when they are the part of, let's say, the simulation that isn't real. So for those of you that are afraid and or hooked in or engaged in conversation like that, let me assure you that there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Nothing whatsoever. And that is one of the greatest things about traveling through this period of time, knowing that, is that we can watch these events. Now, the other thing for the audience to note as well is that the history that we're aware of, let's say, on this planet, has never experienced an event like the one that we're experiencing. So because history has a repeating or cyclical value to it, we're at a point in history that has not been recorded before, let's say. So we've seen the fall and rise of governments, allegedly, but that didn't really happen. It was just transfer of power. But we've seen these other cycles. So we expect these cycles. For example, the business cycle, recessions and depressions, which are still man-made cycles because there's no increase or decrease in humanity's needs. Well, in this case, we're experiencing an event that has never presented itself in those historical cycles. And so what we are experiencing is way out of the context of anything that we understand based on past historical cycles. And that's why people who have the ability to connect with the divine in some way, shape, or form are all getting the same exact message about this rapid ascension of consciousness.
Yeah, a lot of the people are speaking the same tune, right? I want to get into hypnotherapy. When you do hypnotherapy, how does it help activate someone's potential? Because when I hear, or when your average person thinks of hypnotherapy, it's you're getting someone to cluck like a chicken, you know?
I always use that example, yes. This is one area or one field that would normally seem very, very disconnected to the conversation. What I'm about to share with you will give you insight into a paradigm that gives you the idea or the knowing that it's very, very connected. So what we call hypnotherapy, or a lot of people will literally call a quantum healing technique, just so that they can avoid using the word hypnotherapy. So I do intuitive readings, but I don't like the word psychic, but sometimes I have to use it. However, the type of intuitive readings that I do are much more of activations and much more powerful than letting you know the lottery numbers or if someone's going to call you on Friday night for a date. However, hypnotherapy, or a quantum healing technique, it was discovered by a very visionary medical doctor in the 1700s in Germany. So we're familiar with the term being mesmerized, which actually refers to being in a trance-like state. And that comes from Dr. Franz Mesmer in Germany in this period of time. And he understood that we were connected to all things, that all living things were connected. And he referred to it as animal magnetism, was the terminology that he used to describe the quantum field. And as a medical doctor, he was interested in connecting his patients with this animal magnetism, or this quantum field of intelligence, which we call it now, to actually be connecting the patient to this source of creation to heal the body. Well, what a concept, right? To actually connect it with its actual creator, or reconnect it with its actual creator, for the purpose of letting that actual creator restore it. And so it's a very effective means. Now, the word hypnosis or hypnotherapy came from a Scottish doctor who was a follower of Dr. Mesmer. And he was one of the later followers of Dr. Mesmer. And so he was also a medical doctor and also practiced this experimental field of connecting medical patients or medical needs to this field of intelligence for the purpose of healing. Now, within this field, let's say we're connecting someone to the quantum field, which is what in essence the ascension is humanity's collective re-emergence into a fuller state of connectivity with the quantum field. And so individually, we do healing or activations where we bring the highest expression of ourselves or beings, our infinite or multidimensional beings, into the equation. And believe it or not, there are so many different things that have been, for example, discounted or demonized in an attempt to make sure that humanity doesn't find these clues to its freedom and its designed state of being a conscious creator in concert with the divine. And one of those is the power of our imagination. So many times when we're doing hypnotherapy protocols, we're able to take people in, and of course we use our imagination or an imagined journey to accomplish something. A good example of which is that a cancer patient can imagine a Pac-Man type being literally chewing up the cancer cells, and later we'll discover that they've healed completely of cancer without pharmaceutical treatment. So the power that we have to connect to that field, I always remind people who come in for protocols, what you experience will seem like your imagination. But remember, we're accustomed to giving the imagination the power to speak on behalf of our higher self. Dreams, ideas. How many times do we wake up from a dream where our imagination has just been utilized to give us a very potent message? And right away we know that our higher self can use the faculty of imagination to speak to us in pictures, to speak to us in such a way and to reach us. And very often, it's the feeling that we have from this interaction that will speak to us through these pictures, and that feeling will begin to communicate with the physicalized universe, which is less than 1% physical matter and mostly energy. And so the emotion and the energy in the emotion will communicate with the energy in the physicalized reality. And that's why we have powerful physical results, because the majority of the makeup of our physical reality is energy. So you use emotion, and we use a way to get there through the imaging and being communicated with. And we can do that with the help of our guides, our spirit guides. I have a lot of times I do healing with people, and a relative who's crossed over will pop in and start doing a healing protocol on the person, and then they'll receive a healing. Yeah, it's amazing. I just go in and have fun. I just play. Yeah.
Wow. And that's nuts when you have nuts. I say nuts, but for you it's a Tuesday, right? For me, I'm like, wait, what? What? Someone's and it reminds me of like those movies where the person whether it be Sixth Sense or just somebody that sees dead people or angels, and you just see, or Constantine, right? And you see everything going on, and for them it's just like, I gotta deal with this. Or for you it's different. You're like, I get to deal with this, I get to experience this, and this is really cool, and it is a Tuesday.
You say that, and I always use the expression that these miracles absolutely never wear off their new car smell. So, I just actually a couple hours ago had a client, and we did a hypnosis protocol, and it was very, very powerful. And one of the things that is a constant among healers who really have a gift of being able to create healing for others is a sense of surrender, a sense of the fact that I, like the little I, am not the powerful healer. I literally just evoke the connectivity to the quantum field, and I get to go into the field and play with people. So initially, when the angels were communicating with me, they guided me into experiencing some hypnosis protocol, and it only strengthened my intuition. It expanded my awareness. And then I studied hypnotherapy, and I learned about the divided mind, which was very pivotal in this whole journey of ascension, personal and globally. And as a result of all of that, I did hypnosis in a sort of a clinical perspective. And one day the angel said, jump into the field with us and just play. Because when I do sessions, whether they're readings or intuitive readings and activations, or with the quantum healing technique of hypnotherapy, the first thing I do is I hand the session over to the guides and angels and to the creator. And I step aside and I say, okay, I'm going to play, because it's the observer and the observed. So I get to go in and let my jaw is dropping all the time, but it has nothing to do with me. I just get to have the thrill of observing this with the client. And we go into that field together. And because I can communicate with that field, I can see, where they are, or sometimes I'll get a message from the angel that's inside there doing the work with them. And I'll get the message to point them in the right direction, or to give context for what they're experiencing, or to ask them to ask the being a question. So after I started jumping into the field with the clients, then the work became very much more powerful. My client today said, Seph, you need to charge more for what you do, because what you do is not a standard issue service. But it is interesting how healers who are very powerful, what they always do is they hand the session back over to the power that there is, the larger power that we have access to through awareness.
It's interesting how it's a common theme where it's all about being the facilitator and the channel of that healing, of that message, and
in service of,
right? And it's because we are one of many, and we're individuals, but yet we're all the same being. And like with when I went on my journey of learning about what different modalities of energy healing, a lot of times people that get drained, and I know you know this, people that get drained, they're I don't want to say they're in their ego, but they're using their energy to heal, and that's very limited. And
Uh-huh.
we're not perfect, right? We have our challenges. That's why we're here. And so you're using a tainted energy field to heal somebody, and you might be introducing some other stuff. Whereas the other way, the more powerful way, the way you do it, is you bring the source energy, the infinite creator energy, and you just kind of like guide it in like a river, just right?
Uh-huh.
So that's how I see it in my mind, like a river flowing, and you're like, okay, we're gonna just
Yeah.
go here, and then you know what to do with it. And I can only imagine what you're seeing, which brings me to the question: what is it like to communicate with your guides and angels? If you
Yes.
can kind of give somebody a glimpse.
First of all, one of the things that I'll say as well to piggyback on your last point, I did some healing myself as a human in this multidimensional body, and I was bullied as a kid for all the years of high school, and it created a lot of an interesting journey that I would have to take to heal and see myself as a worthy being. And eventually I discovered through some hypnotherapy protocols that my hypnotherapist did for me that the reason that my soul signed up with the soul agreement to be bullied was to ensure that there would be a sense of humility, so that by the time I got to this work, that humility is such a key to inviting that all-powerful presence into the equation, that all-powerful beingness into the equation. And to have that humility installed in such a deep basis, I signed up for the experience of being bullied all through school in order to ensure that I would have that trait and not be tempted to walk into ego. So your question about what it's like to speak to angels, and I actually teach a course, and this is one of those ones that I don't do, at least at this point, via like a recorded modules. I actually take and do small groups. And because there's an entrainment value, because there's an energy value, when we're in the presence of those that are highly aware, we will become highly aware. When we're in the presence of those that have peace, we will become very peaceful. And so when I bring the energy field of entrainment to do that, we discover that we've been talking to them all along. And so very often, for example, one of the distinguishing factors is that when you hear something in second person say something to you like, you should probably go send that email. You should probably call your mother right now, right? That's for you for your New York. You should probably go do this right now. Or you'll hear something that may sound simple, like everything's going to be okay, but it seems like it's coming from something inside of you that's separate. So we all have this connectivity all the time. And when I teach this, one of the most challenging things, like hypnotherapy, one of the most challenging things to get people into hypnotherapy is to get them past this fact that I'm going to control their mind and make them cluck like a chicken. Nothing could be further from the truth. I remind people, if you watch TV, you're being hypnotized every day, and not in a way that you want to be. So, commercials are designed to be persuasive, and they use hypnotic techniques. So if you're watching commercials on TV, you're being hypnotized against your own will. But if you come to a professional who's going to use the same techniques to help you overcome obstacles in your subconscious mind, there's nothing that there is to be afraid of. But when I teach people or help facilitate people from going into that natural entrainment of being connected with their angels, most people associate an angelic encounter with something paranormal, and that certainly does happen. I hear stories of people who were in car accidents and got to see their angels and such, and I see them every day. They look like little flickers. In fact, as we started this interview, I saw 3 of them around, and they showed up just to let me know that they're here. to help with this interview and meet whoever is in the audience that's listening to this program. And when they show up and they speak to us, they come through as like a good idea. They don't care if we give them credit for it or not. We're in a hypnotic state, by the way, when we're in the shower. So that's when we open up our awareness and we're extremely receptive to stream of consciousness. And that's where we get this like, oh, you should go do this. And we get this bit of guidance, which comes from them. And so we sometimes think that they only need to come to us when we've lost our car keys or someone is in the hospital or something like that. But in this very interesting time in human history where we're making a huge transition and we're busting up old paradigms of limitation and illusion and stepping into the world that we actually live in and leaving the world that we thought we lived in, which is an illusion, they're helping us with that. And they're helping us with that on an everyday basis. The last 2 jobs that I had to get, the angels guided me right to them so they can do that for us. If we need financial resources, the angels will reveal how they're going to come in. If we're having a breakdown in communication or a relationship with a person that we love, the angels can come in and facilitate what we need to know to move through that. So they're with us at every point in our life. They do give us our power back, but they are there to illuminate what they can see from their perspective. And so the more we become accustomed to distincting what they're saying to us, the more that it comes through. And ultimately, one of the things that I've discovered, especially in assisting others in gaining that level of connection and communication, is that I ask people to just become aware of what they've already become aware of, and to actually notice that what will happen is the more we do that, it's like a drip in the faucet. The minute we hear it, we can't unhear it anymore. And it might have been dripping for days and days and days, right? But now that we can hear it, we can only hear it until the repair person comes and fixes the faucet. But once we're actually in tune with it, we're never out of tune with it because it's so innate to us.
You're triggering memories of myself trying to decipher my thoughts, other people's thoughts, and then whether it be an angel or a guide, those thoughts or those conversations, because it's like deciphering advice being given in the same voice from different sources is how I have experienced it, where at least the way I was able to differentiate which is this going to hurt anybody? If it's going to hurt anybody, is if it's of negative or taking away the willpower of somebody against someone's will, then I know that that's bad programming. But if it's something that it was an idea that doesn't have any logic sense, but you have a good feeling behind it, that's a piece of advice.
Sure. That's
right?
an amazing litmus to deciphering what's coming from what source. And to which I'd also add this, especially for the audience. Our angels are not necessarily just these separate robed beings with wings. In the fact that we are united with each other, we are also united with them. So they are a perfected version of us, if you would consider perhaps an iceberg, a tip of the iceberg kind of a thing is all connected between what's above and what's below. So the reason why our angels' voices will sound just like ours is because they are us in the perfected form. And because there is no time, and we probably don't have time to get into that discussion. But because there is no time and time is an illusion, we can exist in this form and our perfected form simultaneously. And why wouldn't we set up a bridge where our perfected form would be able to guide us in every little detail of our life, considering that we signed up to have a different or unique experience in this dimension, And the perfected version of ourself, which is safely in a non-dual dimension, is there guiding us, loving us, and making sure that we're staying on our path, or that we feel that we're not lost from the connection to the divine, to God, the Creator. And so that is an aspect of us that is doing that. And certainly the litmus would be that. Now, I've got to tell you that throughout these more than 2 decades now that I've been communicating with them, as I go to share this gift with others, and sometimes that ends up on, let's say, Facebook, to announce an event that I may be doing to share this gift with others, I have seen the whole range of reaction to that, of distrust in that, of, being programmed by religion to not being able to trust what is in your awareness, unless, of course, you go to church and ask someone else if it's holy or not, right? And so there's been this sort of been programming, whether it's intentional or not, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but there's a bit of programming that's taken place in almost every false construct in this world to ensure that we don't end up in this relationship of trust with our awareness. And then when you present an opportunity for people to transcend that distrusting relationship with your awareness, it triggers them. And so I've always blessed these people. So if one of the listeners is one of those people who have ever decided to, troll a person in their past, just know that we just sent you light, knowing that you would discover this one day as well, because it's immensely interesting to watch those who don't understand what you've seen from the inside out and then become critical of it and critical of you and place you in a category where you belong, let's say, in hell with the devil or something of that nature. And the litmus test truly is this radiation of frequency, because you know what's of love and you know what's not. There's a lot of times I would go in church, and I was a little boy and I was connected at the time, and there was like fearful dogma that would come through, religion. And I'd be like, that's not from God, because God is love. God is not fear. That's the opposite of God, right? And so yet that fear is actually parading around as being from God. And then we make that adjustment, because the litmus test really is frequency. If you feel peace and loved in its presence, then it's the light. And that's where the darkness or the opposite cannot disguise itself, because it doesn't radiate the light, because it's not the light. And the light has a very distinct frequency, and let's just say it's the one frequency that we all want. Our innate is to go and connect with love, the frequency, which is the quantum frequency. That's why we want to be in these great relationships. What we really want is love. What we really want is connection to our Creator. When we want a new Ferrari, we really want that feeling of connectedness to our Creator. It's not the Ferrari that we want, although it's a pretty nice car, but that's what we're really after all the time. And then when people achieve it, they're like, oh no, it can't be that, because it's not based in fear and what we've been told to believe. But we know what it is by its radiation, and even inside. And it doesn't matter when we start communicating with the divine and we start communicating with the angels, the next thing that's going to happen, we're still going to have those other thoughts popping in. But then we get to distinct which is from which.
Interesting. I like how you put that. So in closing and summarizing, is there anything that you feel like we might have left out that you wanted to make sure someone knew and understood from our conversation?
Yes. Right now, I want you to know that if you're in the audience, I want you to know that you have more power than you've been led to believe. And that power is in the power of your heart. The more that you feel love, it's simply the awareness of the frequency that connects all things, the quantum field. It is the field that connects all things, and it is around you and connected to you at all times. When you're feeling love, you've just raised your awareness to it. When you block love, all you do is block your awareness and access to the miracle energy that comes from God. And so feeling love, expressing love, being in love, be in love with life, be in love with your day, be in love with everything, and you will find yourself creating or co-creating miracles with your creator, your angels, your highest version of yourself. You will find yourself creating the most amazing things, transcending fear, and living a whole new life.
Well said. Well said. This has been an amazing journey. I feel like I've been flying, and it's interesting how time flew. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, what is going on? My concept of time is way off right now. It's nuts.
Well, that's that activation. So when people come to me to do sessions, what happens when we connect with the quantum field like that, that's what we start to do, is we start to transcend time. I call it getting consciously drunk or consciously high, but we get into this super expanded state. And when we get in that, it's because we're being filled with the light. And so, yes, I too, when I'm doing this, I feel that as well, because when I speak on behalf of this, I connect with them to speak on their behalf, right? And so as a result of that, I also looked at the clock a little while ago and I was like, wow, we could have this discussion for a very long time. And there'd be a lot that we could share with the audience that they would certainly find powerful for themselves, which is why we do all this, out of love. Yeah.
So if anybody is looking to get in contact with you, how can they communicate with you? And please share if there's anything that you are working on that you want to share.
Great. Go to my website, which is talktomyangels.com, talktomyangels.com. At the time of this recording, which by the time this is out, perhaps this project will be finished, I'm creating a community, and the community is all about allowing that field of connectivity to be put up and shared with each other. So when you go to my website, at some point there will be a notification of that. If you want to be part of any of the classes that I teach, there is a place on my website where you can put yourself on the notification list. And then, of course, on my website, if you want to book a personal session with me or a conversation about hypnosis, which is a free initial conversation, you'll find that under the services of my website. And feel free to reach out and let me know how I can help you grow.
Thank you very much for sharing that. All that information will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for hopping on, Seph. I had a blast.
Thank you. Me too.